hearing and balance, or the auditory and vestibular systems. So when you hear, the structure-function relationship that you're most concerned with is encoding sound waves into electrical impulses that the brain can understand. So it's converting sound waves to electrical waves, not too unlike what your radio does or even what a cell phone does. What are the different waves in which we need to take into account? Well, first you need to have some sort of pressure disturbance, some sort of event to start the wave from occurring. The wave will have a certain amplitude, which is the height of the wave, a frequency, which is how often the wave occurs. But when you think about complex sounds, you have things traveling to you at different phases. What we mean here is you will have different frequencies going on, and those will be offset from one another, kind of like an echo, echo, echo. That response will occur at different wave durations. If you think about what structure and function is, you need to think about the three different portions of the ear. You have the external ear, which is basically funneling in that sound. You have the middle ear, which is involved in amplifying the signal. And then the inner ear is where you're going to get the actual transduction of that sound wave into an electrical signal. So think about it as funneling, amplifying, and then sensing a particular signal. What are some of the key structures? The key structures here involve things like the tympanic membrane, which is the first spot in which the inner ear can start amplifying the effects of the sound. You have three different bones, the malleus, incus, and stapes, that will help transduce that sound wave from the tympanic membrane to the oval window. So if we take a greater look at this response, you have a sound wave that's entering the ear. It gets funneled down towards the tympanic membrane. At this particular point, the tympanic membrane will start to vibrate. As it vibrates, the various ossicles, which are those inner ear bones, will also vibrate. As they vibrate, they can then stimulate the oval window to start vibrating. So basically, you're moving in that sound wave via vibrations. Now, are there any ways to modulate the amount of vibration? Sure. This transduction can be regulated by dampening a response. How do you dampen that? By causing muscle contraction to prevent some of that vibration from moving through. The different muscles that you could use to do this are the tensor tympani as well as the stapedius. How do we get that sound wave into the inner ear? For this process, you really want to think about where that last ossicle vibrated on, which was the oval window, and then how that's going to be transferred down the cochlea. The other item to think about for the cochlea is it's actually divided into three different chambers. You first have a top chamber, and this top chamber is filled with perilymph. You have a middle chamber, which has your organ of Corti in it, and this has endolymph in it. And finally, the bottommost layer, which is also filled with perilymph. The importance of this three-chamber component is that sound is going to travel through the places with perilymph, and it's going to be sensed at the places with endolymph. So the actual sense process occurs within this inner chamber, not the outermost or the bottommost chamber. If we roll out the cochlea, you can probably see this better. So you're going to have an oval window in which the stapes is going to vibrate against. It's going to travel down that upper component, across and down the bottom. You can see this as this foot plate vibrates against the oval window. The sound is then transferred all the way to the apex of the cochlea, and then it transfers across the apex and down along the basal chamber. If you think about what is it vibrating against, that is the organ of Corti, or where the hair cells are located. So one is the transmission of the sound, the other is the sense organ. You notice that there's also a round window at the end of the perilymph-filled vesicle. This round window allows for vibrations to occur within the whole fluid-filled system. If you didn't have a place to relieve that vibration, you would not be able to transmit a signal into it. You need to have the ability to both vibrate one side as well as to have the opposite side vibrate so that you can transmit that vibration or sound wave. How this works is the sound causes the stapes to move against the window, and the pressure travels down against the organ of Corti. So by pushing down in certain spots, think of it like kind of like a waterbed, where you're pushing down in a certain part, you're leaving that up. It has then been sensed as a pressure change in the membrane below. As it travels around the apex and back, you'll be pushing now up against that organ of Corti. So you have now thoughts of, as a wave enters in, gone from the oval window, there are certain spots that it will hit on, then it will travel around the apex, and then there are certain spots it will hit on the way back to the round window. It is this resonating portion of where the sound waves hit will allow for which particular hair cells to fire. So there are going to be hair cells along the whole distance from the base to the apex in the organ of Corti. Hair cells are very specific in how they work. So let's go through this process now. You have hair cells that are located on an inner, and then hair cells are located on the outer portion of the membrane. Here, the inner cell ones are the ones that fire to tell you what particular frequency the sound wave is. The outer hair cells, although they're more numerous, are there to provide additional information, such as maybe a description or an ability to have better acuity of the sound. But the inner hair cells tell you what frequency the response is. So you may ask, how can a membrane, this tactile membrane that's floating down over these hair cells, cause a response? Well, if it's pushing down the tactile membrane, you can think about that pushing against the hair cells. If it's coming all the way back around the apex, back towards the round window, it's pushing the membrane up against the tactile membrane. So whether the tactile membrane is being pushed down or the whole basilar membrane is pushing the hair cells up, either way you can get stimulation of these particular hair cells.